الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى أهله ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد فإن خير الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. We give praise and thanks to Almighty Allah. We ask Him to share His blessing upon the noblest man, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and on all those who follow His footsteps. Inshallah, we will continue, where we left off, or try to start again. And what we'll be taking today, bi'idhnillah, is the detailed evidences, bi'idhnillah, on the hukm, the ruling on qira'ati al-fatihati lil-ma'mum, on reciting Surah al-Fatiha for the ma'mum, that is the person who is being led in salah, the congregation, fi salat al-sirriya wa jahriya, in the silent and the loud prayers. Now, one of the very first, the very first thing one should know in this matter is that it is a topic of ikhtilaf, mas'alatu ikhtilafiyya. The scholars differ from it, right from the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to those after them. So when we understand that there's a difference, therefore up to the level of the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then we do what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks us to do when we differ on issues. فَرُدُّوهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولُهُ فَإِن تَنَعْتِمُ اللَّهُ وَأَطِيعُوا الرَّسُولَ. Obey Allah, Allah said, and obey the Rasul. No strings attached, no buts, no anything. وَأُولِي الْأَمْرِ مِنْكُمْ, and those in authority over you in the field of the knowledge of the deen, then these are the scholars. فَإِن تَنَزَعْتُمْ فِي شَيْءٍ وَإِن تَنَزَعْتُمْ فِي شَيْءٍ, and if you and these leaders over you have a difference of opinion, فَرُدُّوهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولُهُ, and then refer that matter to Allah and His Rasul. The first two that you are asked to, follow without any condition whatsoever, attached. So therefore, we'll look at the evidences for the one who is able to. And the best person to know is the one who is looking at the evidences, whether he is able to or is not able to. If he is not able to, what should he do? فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask those who know if you do not know. Ask those who know if you do not know. So Allah has put the people into categories, therefore. So each person is to know what category, in which category he falls, and what to do with that category. Look at the evidences or ask the people of knowledge. So one of the things we said last week, and we said a couple of times before that, is that if you are one of the people who is going to line up behind one of the scholars, because one is not able to look at the evidences himself, then one doesn't have the opportunity, therefore, to argue that a position is better than the other. Because what will qualify one to be able to do that is to be able to say, okay, this is the reason why I've said this is that this position is better than this. When you look at this evidence, you see this there. When you look at that evidence, you see that there. Based on this, that, and that, this is the position that I believe to be the better one. So, barakallahu fikum. So, this is the thing that we should know right from the get-go. Now, alhamdulillah, last week we told us that there are three positions of the scholars on this issue. The first position, says that it is compulsory for one to recite behind the Imam. It is compulsory for one to recite Surah Al-Fatiha behind the Imam in the loud prayers. So the topic that we're talking about is reciting Surah Al-Fatiha behind the Imam in the loud prayers. Any rakah where the Imam is also reciting and can be heard. This is what we're talking about. So some of the scholars say in such a situation, it is compulsory for one to recite Surah Al-Fatiha. The second position is at the other end. They say that it is compulsory not to recite Surah Al-Fatiha or any of the surah after Surah Al-Fatiha. No recitation whatsoever. If one is behind the Imam in the loud prayers and they split into two. Another group says in this second position that even in this, the silent prayers, that you are not to recite anything behind the Imam. And as I said, these positions are held from the companions of the Prophet ﷺ to those after them till today. The third position is a position in the middle of both groups that we have looked at just previously. They say that it is not compulsory. They say it is prohibited, like the second group says, to recite Surah Al-Fatiha or a surah behind the Imam in the loud prayers. However, they say that it is Mustahab to recite Surah Al-Fatiha behind the Imam in the loud prayers during the times when the Imam is not reciting. All the pauses that the Imam will exercise, that one should try to take advantage of them. That taking advantage of those pauses is not compulsory, but mustahab. So they are in between the first group that says it is compulsory to recite and the second group that says it is not compulsory, it is compulsory not to recite. Compulsory to recite, first group. Second group, compulsory not to recite. The third group that are in the middle, they say that it is compulsory not to recite whilst the Imam is reciting, whether he is reciting Surah Al-Fatiha or another surah, but that it is mustahab to recite during the pauses of the Imam. What are the pauses of the Imam? There's a pause before he begins reciting, when he is making dua al-istiftah. So they say one can benefit from this. There are pauses in between surahs that the Imam will be silent in, although those pauses are not enough. Whatever one can recite within that, if it is possible, recite there. Some Imam, though it is not from the Sunnah, they recite between the end of Surah Al-Fatiha, the recitation of Surah Al-Fatiha, and the beginning of the next surah. If the Imam does this thing, that if the Imam one is following does this thing that is not from the Sunnah, then one is to recite Surah Al-Fatiha during that time, that it is mustahab. This is the third position. They say if after the recitation of a surah before going for ruku', the Imam is also silent, then recite Surah Al-Fatiha. So these are pauses those from the Sunnah and those not from the Sunnah. That's the scholars who hold this third position say that one should follow. So why would one, if the Imam is silent between Fatiha and the next surah, why will one recite at that time? When we have said, or the scholars have said, that reciting during this time, silence during this time is not from the Sunnah. It is because you, the one following, will now be in a situation where you either be silent like that Imam during that time, practices something that is not from the Sunnah, or you do something that is linked to the Sunnah. You are not the one that caused it. You now have this opportunity to do something from the Sunnah. Then you do it. So this third group say this thing is from the Sunnah. Do it during this time when this other person is doing something that is not from the Sunnah. So these are the three positions. We'll start with the first position. So we'll take it in this way. Then we'll now go to a PowerPoint slide in a tabular form. I often find that if one does that, it allows one to see things in better perspective, side by side, and now weigh them like you're putting them on balances, on scales, and now weigh the evidences of each one beside themselves. Now, اختلف العلماء في حكم قراءة الفاتحة للمأموم في الصلاة السرية والجهرية على ثلاثة أقوال. The scholars differ with respect to reciting Surah Al-Fatiha for the Ma'mum in the Salat that are silent and in the Salat that are that one speaks up into three opinions. Al-Qawl, Barakallahu fikum. I will urge that we wait till after the class today, so that we don't. Last week we tried to, get questions in and comments also before, entering, and we weren't even able to, finish one position out of the three. So this week we would like to finish the three positions, and then now take positions, questions and comments afterward, inshallah. Barakallahu fikum. Please bear with us. Now, al-qawl al-awwal, the first position. Let's just go. Let's move on this way. Barakallahu fikum. Now, the first position. تجب القراءة الفاتحة على المأموم في جميع الركعات سرية والجهرية. This first position says that it is compulsory to recite Surah Al-Fatiha, whether it is in the silent or the loud prayers. سواء سمع المأموم قراءة الإمام في الجهرية أو لم يسمع. Whether this should be the case, this must be the case. He must recite whether he hears the Imam or doesn't hear the Imam. This first position says سواء مكانه مكانه الإمام من قراءة سواء مكانه الإمام من قراءة الفاتحة أو لم يمكنه. Whether the Imam gives him pauses that are enough, makes it possible for him, creates an environment for him to recite, or he doesn't give him that opportunity to recite. He must find the opportunity and recite. So this is the first position. وهذا قول عمر بن الخطاب. This is amongst the companions linked to Umar bin al-Khattab, wa Ubadah bin Samit, and also Ubadah bin Samit, wa Abdullah bin Amr bin al-As, wa Abu Huraira, also that from the companions. Also, from other than the companions, we have Imam Bukhari, Ibn Hazm al-Andalusi, Imam Shafi'i in his second of two positions, in the newer, the more recent of his two positions. وَعَلَيْهِ أَكْثَرُ Sahaba, and it is the position of many of the companions, or most of the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. وَقَالَ بِهِ إِسْحَاقُ ibn Rawaha. So there are a lot of scholars, even amongst the Tabi'in, Al-Awza'i, Al-Layth, scholars after them that hold this position. What is their evidence? The first of the evidence that they present is when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was observing Salat al-Fajr one day, said, Qara'a Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He was reciting, فَثَقَّلَتْ عَلَيْهِ الْقُرْآنِ الْقِرَاءَ. Then the recitation became difficult for him. It was mixed up. فَلَمَّا فَرَغَ. When he finished, he said, لَعَلَكُمْ تَقْرَؤُونَ خَلْفَ إِمَامِكُمْ. Perhaps you people recite behind your imam. قُلْنَا نَعَمْ. We said, yes. نعم هذا يا رسول الله. We said yes. In some of the narration said yes, we do it very fast in order to not recite while you are reciting. So the Prophet ﷺ said, لا تفعلوا, do not do so, إلا بفتحة الكتاب فإنه لا صلاة لمن لم يقرأ بها, except Surah Al-Fatiha, because there is no salah for the one who does not recite Surah Al-Fatiha. Now, this part over here, illa Fatihatil Kitab, over here, is a point of contention in this evidence that is provided by this first group. Let's move on. So this is an evidence that he brought. This hadith is in Abu Dawud, is in Tirmidhi, Bayhaqi, Ibn Hibban, Ibn Khuzaymah, Ahmad, Hakim, Daraqutni, Al-Bazzar, wa da'afahu Sheikh Al-Albani rahimahullah. Some of the scholars authenticate it. Some of the scholars say that it is da'if. Among the scholars in the recent that says that it is da'if is Imam Al-Albani on this issue. That addition. Due to that addition, we'll get to it in details. Wajhu dalala. What is the in what direction is this evidence to be applied? It says la taf'alu ila fatihatil kitab. So those who hold this opinion say that because the Prophet ﷺ told them don't do, if he had stopped there, then that would be don't recite anything at all whilst I'm reciting. But he now said, illa, except the Fatihatul Kitab, except Surah Al-Fatiha. So that exception now permits you to do what? To recite Surah Al-Fatiha. Not only that it exempts you, it makes it compulsory for you to recite Surah Al-Fatiha. So this is what many of the scholars said on this. So let us now look at a rebuttal to that. The rebuttal to that is that أنه من رواية المحكول. One, if you look at the narrators of hadith, the books of the narrators of hadith, Mahkul al-Dimashqi, one of the scholars of old, is one of the narrators of this hadith. He's a tabi'ah. He was a tabi'ah, generation after the companion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. وهو مدلس. He is a known mudallis. A mudallis is someone who narrates a hadith and intentionally obscures somebody in the chain of transmission that he knows that people have an issue with. So rather than saying akhbarana or akhbarani, aw anba'ani, aw anba'ana, using terms like sami'tu, I heard, anba'ana, we were informed, or anba'ani, I was informed. You know, that shows clearly that communication took place between A and B. He will use the word an, from, which is ambiguous. It could mean that you heard directly. It could mean that you didn't hear directly. Or it could mean that you received the information directly from the person in any form, whether he gave you his book, this is my book where I wrote it, copy it down, or listen to me, this is what I heard, or anything, or we were in a group and he told this to us. Things like this that will show direct communication. A mudallis doesn't use those terms, rather he uses an, from. So it is not everybody that uses an that the scholars have a problem with. No, in fact, the default is that you can use an, no problem, so long as you are not known to be a mudallis, someone who uses the an as a means of cover. So makhul is a mudallis and is in the chain of transmission of this hadith. Waqad an'ana, and not only that he's in chain of this hadith, he reported the hadith with an. So one of the requirements that scholars of hadith put down for accepting a hadith from a mudallis, a non-mudallis, is that he should use specific wordings that show direct hearing. So in this place, in this hadith, Makhul did not. Rather, he used an ana. He used an ana. Fi jami', in all the turuq, all the routes of transmission, marwiya anhu. Everybody that related this hadith from him, it wasn't just one person. In communicating with them, he used an for all of them. So this is one weakness of the hadith. The second weakness of the hadith is annahu marwiya an Muhammad ibn Ishaq. It's also in the chain of transmission. One of the chains of transmission is Muhammad ibn Ishaq. Even though he is not, a mudallis, however, he is the only one who narrated this hadith, putting la'allakum, where the Prophet said that perhaps you recite behind your imam. Every other person that narrated the hadith did not put this, there. So the scholars, what do they say about him? Imam, he says, because of that, وَلِذَلِكَ لَمْ يَعْتَمِدْهَا الْبُخَارِ فِي صَحِيحِ. Because of this, Imam al-Bukhari did not record this in his hadith. فَرَوَى أَصْلُ الْحَدِيث. Rather, he just recorded a part of the hadith. Imam Bukhari, he said that the part of the hadith that says La salata liman lam yaqra'u bi fatihatil kitab. There is no salah for the one who does not recite Surah Al-Fatiha. وقد قال Al-Hafiz Abu Zur'a Al-Razi, one of the greatest imams of hadith, Abu Zur'a Al-Razi, he said that إذا انفرد Ibn Ishaq bil hadith, if Ibn Ishaq is the only one that narrated a hadith, like the one here that mentions la'ala, he says la yakun hujjah, such a hadith is not an evidence. ثم روى له حديث قراءة خلف الإمام ومن ورد من متابعات لمحمد ibn Ishaq فلا يعول عليها لضعفها. Then this hadith was recited to him, and he didn't bother doing a sharh of it. He didn't comment, on it, because alayha lidha'fiha, because of its weakness. So we've seen two people in the chain of transmitters responsible for weakness of the hadith. Number three is that in the chain of transmission, we're going into a bit detail about this, because oftentimes the lay people, once they hear a hadith is da'if by a scholar, they will believe that is da'if by all scholars. No, scholars have different opinion, just as they have on fiqh, they also have on hadith. So the student of knowledge wants to know what is the reason behind it. It's not just that Al-Albani said it is da'if, or Al-Albani says it is, sahih. No, what is the reason? In fact, the scholars, when somebody is disparaged, the narrator of hadith is disparaged, and the person who disparaged him did not give a reason, they will say, al-jahru al-mufassar muqaddam. They say that the jahar, the disparagement that is mufassar, that has details, is given preference over a disparagement that doesn't give any details, just say it's not a good narrator. No. So the third is that inna isnadahu muttarrab an makhul, says the hadith also shows mix up when you look at the various chains of transmission. Famarra yarwihi an ubada. Sometimes in some of the chains of transmissions, makhul says that he says an, he uses the word an from Ubada ibn Samit, that this hadith is from Ubada ibn Samit. Sometimes he says it is marra an Muhammad an Ubada. Sometimes he puts somebody in between, a transmitter in between. Marratan anhu. Sometimes he says it is from just this Muhammad. Sometimes he says an Nafi', from Nafi', the student of Abdullah ibn Umar, and Ubada, like that. So there are evidence mix-ups, the same hadith. You can't, these, different differences and mix-ups in the chain of transmissions. Sheikh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah. Sheikh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah said, "Hada hadith mu'allal." This hadith has weaknesses. عند أئمة al-hadith, with the scholars, the imams of hadith, بأمور كثيرة, because of many reasons. So we'll stop here, because on this comment of Imam Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, just to save on time. So said ضعفه Ahmad wa ghayruhu min al-a'imma. So Imam Ahmad and other than him, I've said that it is inauthentic, because oftentimes when in contemporary times you're discussing these issues, somebody will say Imam al-Albani said, but this is not a fresh issue. It's something that had been there from the time of the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we now know the weakness of this part of this hadith that this first group says. So we can't use that. Where authenticity stops is don't do so. They were reciting behind the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he said, don't do so. The addition, except Surah Al-Fatiha, not authentic. Ad-Dalil Thani, the second evidence that this group uses is the hadith of Salatu liman, la salata liman lam yakra bi Fatihatil Kitab. There's no salah for the one who does not recite Surah Al-Fatiha. Rawah al-Bukhari and Muslim. Bukhari and Muslim. This is authentic. There are no two ways about it. Now, the meaning is where other scholars differ from them, the remaining, two groups. Now, wajud dalala. So the direction of this evidence, or the application of this evidence, is where they said la salata. There's no salah, and the salah here doesn't have alif and lam in front of it. Rather, it's salah, meaning any salah. There is no salah. Anything that is called salah, whether it's nafil, whether it is salah that is performed by an individual, alone or in congregation, or one is the imam in that congregation, whether you are the one following the imam in that congregation, once what you are doing is called salah, this hadith is all encompassing. It is general. It covers it. La salata. There is no salah. Liman lam yaqra bi fathatil kitab. There is no salah for the one who does not recite Surat al-Fatiha. So therefore, they say this hadith is general. The other scholars, and as we said, the position of the majority is that is not compulsory. So the majority of the scholars, they say that yes, this hadith is authentic. Yes, it is general. We agree with you, but it has been specified by other evidences. It has been specified by other evidences. Now, so, and what are the evidences that specify that? One, the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran. وَإِذَا قُرِئَ الْقُرْآنِ فَاسْتَمِعُوا لَهُ وَأَنْصِتُوا لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ. So the rebuttal to that is that the majority, they say that Allah says, when the Quran is being recited, فَاسْتَمِعُوا لَهُ, listen to it, وَأَنْصِتُوا, and be quiet, لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ, so that you will be shown mercy. So they say this specifies it in general terms. وَإِذَا, whenever the Quran is being recited, whether in Salat or outside Salat, is a when. In Salat is a when. Outside Salat is a when. But it said beyond that, that apart from one or two scholars of Tafsir that differ, the scholars of Tafsir, Ibn al-Tabari, Ibn Kathir, Imam al-Sa'di, al-Qurtubi, mention them. They say that this hadith was revealed with respect to the conduct of the ma'mum in Salah. Say it was revealed with respect to conduct in Salah. And the context, they say, shows that it is addressed to the ma'mum, because it says, وَإِذَا قُرِئَ الْقُرْآنِ فَاسْتَمِعُوا لَهُ. Who recites? It is the imam. Who then is the one that listens? It is the ma'mum that is behind the imam. So I say, there are two ways that we can do things. We can either say, not look at this evidence and go with La Salata liman lam yaqra bi fathatil kitab. Or we can say that we will accept both evidences and use this one, the Quran, to specify the general nature of La Salata liman lam yaqra bi fathatil kitab. So the one who uses both evidences, and the default is that one, because Allah says, وَمَا أَتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوهُ, whatever the messenger brings to you, take it. وَمَا نَهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ فَانْتَهُ, and whatever he prohibits you from, go away from it. Because of that, whatever the Prophet ﷺ comes to us, we must take it. It's a command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when we have a hadith that apparently conflict, what we want to do is resolve that conflict in a way that allows us to take both of them into consideration. When that is not possible, then we want to take both of them into consideration. The first instance, you take both of them into consideration 100%. Find a way that the scholars have done to do that and choose that. If that is not possible, find a way of choosing both of them such that only an aspect of one of them is not in full operation. When that is not possible, that is when you can now begin to talk about abrogation. That is when you can begin to talk about abrogation. So abrogation is never the first way to go. So this is the rebuttal on that point. Dalil al-Thalith. So we've looked at two evidences for this position. The first one, the later part of it, that except Surah Al-Fatiha, we found it was weak because of a number of issues. We took three of them. The second is La Salata liman lam yaqra bi Fatihat Kitab. There's no salah for the one who does not recite Surah Al-Fatiha. The hadith is authentic, without a doubt. It is in Bukhari and Muslim, and it is general. Yes, it applies to everything. But there are so many things in the deen, we've taken many of them, that you have something general, then you have something that's another hadith that now specifies or exempts a certain category of people. So this is one of such instances. Dalil al-Thali, the third evidence, is something similar to the second one, where the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man salla salah lam yaqra fiha bi al-Quran fahiya khidaj thalatha ghayr tamam." Said the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever performs salah and does not recite in it Surah Al-Fatiha, it is aborted. It is aborted. It is aborted. It is incomplete. So this hadith of Abu Huraira is narrated by Imam Muslim. It's also authentic, and it is also general. So there are many hadith like this that are similar, but their wordings are different from the second one and this one. You derive the same judgment from them, that they are all encompassing, general, specified by وَإِذَا قُرِئَ الْقُرْآنِ فَاسْتَمِعُوا لَهُ وَأَنْصِتُوا لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ. That is the rebuttal of the first group. I mean, of the majority rather. Now, let's go to the fourth evidence that the first group, those who say that you must recite Surah Al-Fatiha, bring. Iqra bi Fatiha al-Kitab. Now, this is a position of Umar bin al-Khattab, where he was asked that should I recite Surah Al-Fatiha? He said yes. He said recite Surah Al-Fatiha to Yazid ibn Sharik when he asked Umar bin al-Khattab. He said recite Surah Al-Fatiha. I said to him, even if I am you, like in the position of the Imam, he said yes. Qala wa in kunta ana, even if you are in my position, qult wa in jahrata, and if you do jahar of the you recite aloud, i.e. in the loud prayers, qala wa in jahart, and if I recite aloud. So, meaning that the position of Umar bin al-Khattab is that you should recite aloud in this. This sanad, the chain, is authentic. No dispute about that. So, all of this, we've been able to summarize in something that there are evidences, each of the evidence that has been provided by the proponents of this group either have some weaknesses or are completely sound, but are general, all-encompassing in application. However, they are specified by other evidences which exempt a group of people. Because these scholars who hold this opinion themselves say that there are exemptions. For instance, if somebody comes to the mosque and he meets the Imam in the ruku' position, they do not apply this hadith, La Salata liman lam yaqra bi Fatihatil Kitab, the hadith of Abu Bakr. They don't. So it means that they themselves say it, that there are exemptions to La salata illa bi fathatil kitab. There's no salah except with Surah Al-Fatiha. So they bring that as one. They also bring another instance where the person is not able to recite Surah Al-Fatiha. He just accepted Islam and he hasn't mastered Surah Al-Fatiha. They bring that as an exemption too. They also bring a situation where the man joins the imam in salah while the imam is standing. Not that he met the imam in ruku'. He met the imam in standing. But before he could say anything, alhamdulillah, the imam goes for ruku'. They exempt this person from reciting Surah Al-Fatiha. Or even though the more correct position is that the person must recite Surah Al-Fatiha. He met the imam in standing and must do the rites of standing. They say that following the imam takes precedence over Surah Al-Fatiha in that instance. So the question to ask is, okay, if the person is now wants to do ruku', but before he does ruku', the imam goes for standing, back to the standing position. Will you abandon the ruku' also because following is more important than doing a ruknu? Because Fatiha is a ruknu. They said we should abandon it when the imam goes for ruku'. Okay, then the principle must be applicable in all instances. So that's it. Now, the second position, alhamdulillah, I've been able to go fast on this. The second position is لا يجب قراءة الفاتحة على المأموم ولا في ركعات السرية ولا في جهرية وهو قول الحنفية ورواية عند حنابلة وبه قال علي ابن أبي طالب وزيد ابن حارثة وجابر ابن عبدالله. Says this position says that there is nothing to be recited by the ma'mum when he is following the imam. Whether it is in the silent prayers or the loud prayers, there is nothing for him to recite. It is a position of Imam Abu Hanifa and the Hanafiya school of thought. It is one of the positions from Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal. It is the position among the companions of Ali ibn Abi Talib and also Zayd ibn Haritha and also the great companion Jabir ibn Abdullah and Sa'id ibn Abi Waqqas wa Abdullah ibn Abbas wa ibn Mas'ud wa Abdullah ibn Umar. So again, like we said, this is not a recent thing. It's not a new thing at all. It is a difference of opinion right up to the level of the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, they've said it. What is the evidence that one must not recite anything behind the imam once you are a ma'mum? Of course, they all agree, all these three groups, that when you are praying alone and you are also, or when you are the imam, in these two cases, that you must recite Surah Al-Fatiha, and that the La Salata illa liman lam yaqra bi Fatihat al-Kitab applies to you. They don't have any different opinion with regards to that one. It is when you are ma'mum that they differ. It is when you are ma'mum that they differ. So let us look at their evidences and see what their opponents, the first group, just like we said, looked at the opponents of the first group, the second and the third, we'll also look at the opponents of this second group, the first and the third group, how they respond and give rebuttals to their position. So the second position, what's their evidence? One evidence is that they say the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, man kana lahu imam fa qira'atul imam qira'atul lah, or fa qira'atul imam lahu qira'ah. Say there's a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam from Jabir ibn Abdullah. So therefore it is not strange that Jabir ibn Abdullah holds the position that there's no recitation for the ma'mum if his imam is reciting. He himself narrated this hadith, so it's not strange that he has that position. So the hadith says, whoever has an imam, the recitation of the imam is his recitation. Whoever has an imam, the recitation of the imam is his recitation. Rawahu Ibn Majah wa Ahmad wa Hassanahu Al-Albani rahimahullah. Said this hadith is narrated by Ibn Majah and also by Imam Ahmad in his Sunan, and it is authenticated by Al-Albani. That is in recent times. Several other scholars before him have authenticated the hadith too. Waqala Az-Zayla'i, one of the previous scholars, older scholars, says, Lahu turuq ukhra, wa hiya wa in kanat madkhula, walakin yashuddu ba'duha ba'dun. Now, all scholars of hadith agree that this hadith, each and every single chain that is known of this hadith is weak. However, where the scholars differ, they also agree that many of the chains of this hadith have weaknesses that are muhtamal, that are not heavy, that can be overlooked, not as an individual hadith, but if in I think the better word to use that their weaknesses are slight. They are not grave. They are not grave weaknesses. So the scholars now split into two, not only on this hadith, any hadith where you have many chains of that hadith, each of them being weak. They will say, some of them say weakness upon weakness is more weakness. Some group of scholars will say, when you have weaknesses, which is not due to somebody being a liar in the chain of transmission or something, like that, that these many chains strengthen themselves. It's like a broom when you bring it together. And you look at evidences from even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the people of Yasin. Allah sent a messenger to them. He sent a second. Fa'azaz Nabi, Thalith. And he gave them a third. Each one of them saying the same thing. So their message didn't change. The quality of their message didn't change. It was just the number that was used to strengthen themselves. Also Musa, alayhi salam, Harun was sent to strengthen him. Not that the message was different in quality, no. But that adding numbers strengthens and helps to remove doubts, strengthens the message and helps to remove doubt in the presence of the one who has an issue, if only one person had brought it. So they hold this position, and this is the position of Az-Zayla'i and also Imam Al-Albani and many of the scholars who authenticated this hadith. So they say, yes, we agree with you with that this hadith, each one of the chains are weak. However, when we bring them together, they strengthen each other and they become sahih li'ghayrihi, sahih due to external factors. That's one of the categories of hadith. And that is also called Hasan hadith. And this is the work that Imam At-Tirmidhi is most popular for, is Jami Al-Tirmidhi. He worked on a hadith that are in this category, that they have minor weaknesses. And when you bring them together, bring this chain, bring that chain, then they become Hasan, Sahih li ghayrihi. Now, so this is one evidence that this second group bring. Say, nobody is to recite behind the Imam in the loud prayers because of this hadith. Whoever has an imam, the recitation of the imam is his recitation. We said in the beginning that this group itself splits into two. One group says that because of this same hadith, that whether it is loud prayers or silent prayers, once you are the ma'amum praying behind an imam, there's no recitation for you. Because the hadith is general. It says, man, whoever, kana lahu imam, has an imam. So once you have an imam, qira'at al-imam is your qira'ah. The recitation of imam is your recitation. Whether it is a silent prayer, the recitation, you have an imam. Recitation of the imam is your recitation. If it's a loud prayers, recitation of the imam is your recitation. All you need to do is have an imam according to this hadith. So again, from the companions downwards, they hold this position. Now, so now, you know, so we talked about this one, that scholars who say that the hadith, that this hadith is weak, and those who say yes, we agree. In fact, there isn't any scholar that says that it isn't individually weak. As far as I know, there may be. As far as I know, I don't know of any scholar that says that it isn't weak individually. But I know are scholars who say that majmu' al-turuq, when you combine the turuq, the paths of this hadith, they become. Now, dalil al-thani, the second dalil of this group that says nothing is to be recited behind the imam, not Fatiha, not the surah after Fatiha, once it is the loud prayers. It says the hadith of Abu Bakr, where Abu Bakr came into the mosque, met the Prophet ﷺ in ruku', says وهو راكع فركع قبل أن يصل إلى الصف. Then he did ruku' before reaching the saf. فذكر ذلك للنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال, the Prophet that was mentioned to the Prophet ﷺ, and he said, زادك الله حرصا ولا تعود. May Allah increase you in zeal for the deen, but don't repeat what you did. What is the wajhu of this dalala? What is the point of this evidence? It is that if the hadith, and if what Abu Bakr did was something that invalidated his salah, that the Prophet ﷺ will have asked him to repeat his salah, just as he told the man who prayed badly, that go back and pray, for you have not prayed. Here's a man who the Prophet ﷺ, by his comments, approved his salah. Didn't ask him to go and pray his salah. And what was missing in his salah? Surah Al-Fatiha. So based on that, this second group, which is split into two, one group says that it shows that even Surah Al-Fatiha is not a ruknu. One group says that, or this second group. One subgroup says that. The second subgroup says that it is a ruknu. However, this hadith of Abu Bakr tells us that there is an exemption in this particular context, where somebody comes to meet the imam in ruku', arrives at the salah, and he meets the imam in ruku'. So this is the second evidence that it produced, the hadith of Abu Bakr. So either way you cut it, all scholars agree on this hadith of Abu Bakr, on this issue, that those that say that you must recite, they say the hadith of Abu Bakr is one of the exemptions to not reciting, one of the exemptions not covered by La Salata liman lam yaqra bi Fatihatil Kitab. There's no salah for the one who does not recite Surah Al-Fatiha. The second group holds on to this hadith too. The third group, that is mediating between both groups, also holds on to this hadith. The third evidence that's produced by those who say nothing is to be recited behind the imam. Say now يجب قراءة الفاتحة على المأموم في ركعات السرية وكذلك إذا لم يسمع. The question was asked last class with regards to the point that I made with regards to what the scholars say about hearing the imam. So said it is compulsory to recite Surah Al-Fatiha for the ma'mum fi raka'at as-sirriya in the silent prayers, that is the one of the subgroups of the second position. وَكَذَلِكَ إِذَا لَمْ يَسْمَعْ قِرَاءَةَ الْإِمَامِ, and also if he does not hear the qira'ah of the imam fi raka'at al-jahriya, in the loud prayers, whether لِبُعْدِ al-makan, whether because of the distance, his distance from the imam, أو لصمم, or because the imam is the person that is listening is deaf. فيجب عليه القراءة الفاتحة عملا بالأصل. Then in that case it is compulsory on him to recite Surah Al-Fatiha, because in this case it now goes back to the asl. The reason why the Prophet ﷺ asked people not to recite, they say, is because their recitation was interfering with his. Then the law came to abrogate recitation in this case. So they said if the person hearing the person cannot hear the imam, then he can recite. This subgroup says so. Of course, the what do you call it? There's a little weakness in this point, and that is that if somebody who is deaf is reciting Surah Al-Fatiha, he can still interfere with the imam. So if it's at a distance where the imam can hear him, then he will be interfering with the imam. Note, he's called a deaf person because he can't hear. He won't be able to hear even himself. So if he raises, if you talk to somebody who is deaf, you'll see that their pitch is different, higher. So that's on that point. So they use then, as we said, they use as evidence also what's the no. Okay, now we're in the third position. We're in the third position. The third position says that you are to recite. It is compulsory for you to recite. Maybe I thought that this was still part of the second position. The third position says that it is compulsory to recite behind the imam. يجب قراءة الفاتحة على المأموم في ركعات السرية. It is compulsory for the ma'mum to recite behind the imam in the silent prayers. وكذلك إذا لم يسمع قراءة الإمام. Also, if he cannot hear the recitation of the imam. This is the third position. What is the evidence? The evidence is now, their evidence is one, the hadith of Ubadah bin Samit that we talked about earlier, and the hadith of Abu Hurairah. That these evidences, they are rebuttals to them, is their evidence. That these evidences are general and are specified by the hadith. One that says that anyone who has an imam, the recitation of the imam is a recitation. Two, the verse of the Quran, and that is another hadith like it. And two, the verse of the Quran that says when the Quran is being recited, listen to it and be quiet so that you'll be shown mercy. Say these evidences specify the generality or the general nature of the other hadith. Thereby, we can work with both of them together, both sets of hadith together. So this is the third position. Now, let's see if we. Okay, so that is the first evidence of the first position, of the third position, the ones in the middle of those that say must recite and those that say must not recite. In the middle, they say recite. You say don't recite when the imam is reciting. Choose his pauses and recite there. Mustahab is mustahab for you. They say it is prohibited. This third position say it is prohibited to recite whilst the imam is reciting, but it's mustahab for you to recite when he is not reciting. It is mustahab for you to recite when he is not reciting. So this is this third position. The first evidence is their rebuttal. General versus specifying text. General text versus specifying text. The second evidence is a hadith that says, إِنَّمَا جُعِلَ الْإِمَامِ لِيُؤْتَمَّ بِهِ فَإِذَا كَبَّرَ فَكَبِّرُوا وَإِذَا قَرَأَ فَأَنْصِتُوا. The imam has only been appointed to be followed. The imam has only been appointed to be followed. If he does take the takbir, فَكَبِّرُوا, when he does the takbir, you all together do takbir also. وَإِذَا قَرَأَ فَانْصِتُوا, and when he recites, be quiet. So this is one hadith that goes against the weak segments of the hadith of Ubadah bin Samit that we treated at the very beginning, where he said, don't recite except for Surah Al-Fatiha. So this hadith says, when he is reciting, be quiet. So when you remove that weak segment, the authentic portion of it are two, that the Prophet ﷺ asked them to stop reciting. There is the hadith that says there's no salah for anyone that doesn't recite Surah Al-Fatiha. There's this hadith that says that when the imam is reciting, keep quiet. So there's this hadith that says when the imam is reciting, keep quiet. So it specifies the one that came before. La salata liman lam taqra, lam yaqra bi fatihatil kitab. There's no salah for the one who does not recite Surah Al-Fatiha. This hadith that says when the imam wa idha qara'a fansitu, when he is reciting, be silent, specifies it, exempts the ma'mum. It doesn't exempt the imam because he is the one reciting. It doesn't exempt the one who is praying individually. There's no one listening to him. It exempts the one who is listening. وَإِذَا قَرَأَ فَأَنْصِتُوا. When he is reciting, be quiet. Okay, so from there, let's move to, so what, now, just like we have in many hadith, there's a rebuttal. The first group say this specific hadith, as you can see here, Rawahu Abu Dawud wa Nasai wa Ibn Majah wa Ahmad wa Sahahu Sheikh Al-Albani. So this hadith, they say it is weak. And they brought evidence to say that it is weak. So one of the evidences is that this hadith is said to be from Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu. But we know there's another narration from Abu Hurairah, a fatwa of his, of Abu Hurairah, when somebody asked him, and he said, recite to yourself. He said, recite to yourself. So how are these compatible? It must mean that this hadith is the one that has a problem, according to them. Of course, it could mean that it could also be the other way, that the other hadith is the one that has a problem, or the other narration, Athar. Now, so that's one of the things that they have with this hadith. So they say that it is weak. So we won't go into whether it is weak or not, because the next evidence makes it irrelevant to discuss the weakness of this hadith or not. The next hadith has almost the same wording, and it is in Sahih Muslim. So let's leave this one that has the same meaning as is, that we are scholars are saying it's authentic. They're saying some are saying it's not authentic. Let's go to the next one. It is the hadith of Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. He says that خطبنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم spoke to us. He gave us a sermon. وبين لنا سنتنا, and he explained to us our sunnah, that is our deen. When the people of hadith say sunnah, they don't mean mustahab. They mean everything in Islam. So that which is compulsory, that which is mustahab, that which is mubah, everything. When the people of fiqh are talking, that when they say sunnah, they mean mustahab, they mean mandub. So he said, فَبَيَّنَ لَنَا sunnatana. So he explained everything of Islam to us, our religion to us. He explained our religion to us. وَعَلِّمْنَا صَلَاتَنَا. And part of that is that he explained to us our salah. فَقَالْ, and he said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, إِذَا صَلَيْتُمْ, when you people pray, فَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةِ, establish the salah. Not just one person praying here in his room, and things like that. No, establish the salah. Have a mosque. Call to the prayer. Let the people go to the mosque. ثُمَّ لِيَؤُمَكُمْ أَحَدُكُمْ. Then appoint an imam. Let one of you lead you. فَإِذَا كَبَّرَ فَكَبِّرُوا. When he says the takbir, all of you follow. Remember the other hadith, إِنَّمَا جُعِلَ الْإِمَامُ لِيُؤْتَمَّ بِهِ. Imam has only been appointed to be followed. So he said, فَإِذَا كَبَّرَ فَكَبِّرُوا. When he says the takbir, all of you say the takbir. وَإِذَا قَرَأَ فَأَنْسِتُوا. When he recites, keep quiet. Sahih Muslim. So the previous one, you see that the wordings are similar. And there's no point in engaging in the discussion of that specific hadith for our own purpose. This is in Sahih Muslim. So, of course, some of the scholars say say that it is not authentic, despite being in Sahih Muslim. ورواه البيهقي والدارقطني والبزار ونحوه وصححه الشيخ الألباني. This hadith also narrated by other narrators of hadith apart from Muslim, and other authenticators also authenticated it apart from Imam Al-Albani. So this is it. Let's go to the fourth. So this the point here is that this hadith makes it clear that when the imam is reciting, people are to keep quiet. So the first group say yes. Those that say that it is authentic out of them say yes, they are to keep quiet, except the hadith of Ubadah bin Samit that says that the Prophet ﷺ said, except Surah Al-Fatiha. But of course, we've gone through that part is weak for several reasons, like Imam Ahmad Ibn Taymiyyah told us. We took about 3 of the reasons for weaknesses of the hadith. Now, The third group, they concur with this hadith. The difference between the third group and the second group concur with this hadith. But the difference between the second and the third group is in the middle. They say, the second group say that this is proof that it is prohibited to recite anything behind the imam. This is what we are saying. That is the statement of the second group. The third group says, no, this is not what we are saying. What we are saying is that this hadith tells us that it is not, that we should not recite whilst the imam is reciting. Because that is what he says. وَإِذَا قَرَأَ, and when he is reciting. What about when he's not reciting? So this is the position of the third. When he's not reciting, let people recite. There's nothing prohibiting them. So that is the difference between the second and the third group. Now, Dalil al-Rabi', the fourth position of this last group is that now the hadith of Abu Huraira, that is like the hadith of Ubadah bin Samit, were different in the ending part. And this is the hadith. It said, Anna Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam insarafa min as-salati jahara fiha. Min salatin jahara fiha. So the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam terminated his salah, and that was a salah where he recited aloud. Faqal, and he said, Hal qara'a ma'iya ahad minkum anifan? Did any one of you just now recite behind me? فقال رجل, a man from amongst them said, Na'am, Ya Rasulullah. Qala inni aqul, Ya Rasulullah, said, yes, O Messenger of Allah. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, inni aqul mali unazzi' al-Quran. Why is it that the Quran is being contested, from me? Fantaha an-nas. This is the, up until this place is the hadith. This is an addition. So now said, Fantaha an-nas an qira'a ma'a Rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Says, then the people ceased reciting behind the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Fima jahara fihi Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. People, that is in what the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam jahara fihi, recited aloud. Bil qira'a fi salawat hina sami'u dhalik. When they heard that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told them that why is it that that I was saying to myself, why is it that the Quran is being pulled away from me? That when the people heard that, they stopped reciting behind the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the loud prayers. Rawahu Imam Malik in his Muwatta narrated this hadith. Also in his Sunan, Imam Abu Dawud narrated it. Imam al-Tirmidhi in his Jami', An-Nasai, Ibn Majah, Al-Bayhaqi, Ibn Hibban, Ahmad, Al-Razzaq, and Al-Basaam. They all recorded these hadith. However, now, the person narrating the hadith was Abu Huraira. This addition over here, this is the word of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Stops here. This addition over here, is it the words of Abu Huraira or the words of Imam Zuhri, who is one of the narrators of this hadith, narrated from Ibn Akima, who narrated from Abu Huraira. Imam Zuhri is a tabi', he met companions. So is it the words of Abu Huraira or the words of Imam Az-Zuhri, one of the very heavyweights amongst the tabi'? The scholars differ. Some say it is the words of Abu Huraira. Some say it is the word of Imam Az-Zuhri. this addition. Imam Ibn Taymiyyah says, either way we cut it, it has no impact. Who said it? He says that, however, what he believes is that it is the word of Imam al-Zuhri. And it says he believes that it is the words of Imam al-Zuhri. Some of the scholars say that it is the Innaha Qawl min Abi Huraira. That some of the scholars say that it is the words of Abu Huraira. If it is the words of Abu Huraira, then he is saying what he saw, that this is what the companions did. His own fatwa, notwithstanding, as we know of the case in wudu that we talked about last week, that he had his own way of doing wudu, that he didn't want people to know. That was his way. But the wudu that was narrated from the people, you wash from the tip of your fingers to the elbow. Abu Huraira washed to the armpit. So just to be, safe, because some people say that is all of that is the hand, from the tip of your fingers to the elbow. Even if you go to medical school today, when they are studying that part in anatomy, it is the hand, the upper limb. So to be safe, he decided, let me just wash it up to the distance. But the text of what the Prophet ﷺ did is up to the elbow. Even the Quran. وَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ إِلَى الْمَرَافِقِ, up to the elbow. So there's a fatwa of Abu Huraira, and there is what he reported here. So he said, if we say that it is the words of Abu Huraira, then no problem. He said what he saw. If we say it is the words of Az-Zuhri, no problem too. He met the companions and he's saying what he saw of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. But of course, we know that there's a difference of opinion amongst the companions on this issue. So when he said the people ceased, he's talking about what happened when this issue happened. When the Prophet ﷺ said, why is it that the Quran is being dragged with me? So Fantaha Nas, and the people, that is the companions, stopped doing it. So this is these are the three positions, the evidences of each group that we've been able to present. I said I would represent it in a quick, I think just about 5 slides, tabular form, so that we look at the evidences side by side and see, what's the evidence, how the evidences weigh against each other. Now, there are 3 positions. The first says you must recite. The second position says you must not recite. The third position in the middle says that you must not recite while the Imam is reciting. The second position is that you must not recite at all once you are the Ma'mum. Remember, what we are talking about is the ruling on reciting Surah Al-Fatiha when led by the Imam in the loud prayers. So it doesn't include the person praying individually. It doesn't include the Imam. The third position says that you must not recite while the Imam is reciting. You may, as something that is Mustahab, recite during the pauses of the Imam. So there are 2 subgroups of this position. There's a subgroup that says when the Imam exercises a pause, then recites in those pauses compulsorily, because everything now reverts during the pauses to what they were. Because in the pauses, you are not competing with the Imam. You're not competing with the imam. The second group say, no, it's not a thing of competing with the imam. That was the reason why the prohibition was given. But now the law was general. That فَإِذَا قَرَأَ وَإِذَا قَرَأَ فَأَنْسِتُ. And when he is reciting, keep quiet. So he is reciting in this standing position. So it's a thing of, is it whilst he is actually reciting or whilst he is in the position of reciting? Between these two subgroups of this third position. So now for each position, there are proponents. So those who say you must not, that we have Adhkaar from them, that you must not, that you must recite, You have Umar bin al-Khattab, we have Abu Huraira, who took their positions earlier on. We, for those who say you must not recite, we have Ali ibn Abi Talib, we have Zayd ibn Haritha, and other companions like that. In the middle, we have Jabir ibn Abdullah, radiallahu anhu, and some of the other companions who say that you must not recite when the Imam is reciting. However, during the pauses, you can. Now, the evidence for those who say that you must not recite when the Imam is reciting, and those who say you must not recite at all, is the same evidence that man kana lahu imam kana fa inna qira'atul imam lahu qira'a. Whoever has an imam, the recitation of the imam is his recitation. So we see that these two groups share the same evidence on this point. So the only difference is the way they understand it. This group say that this is proof that there is no Fatiha, no Surah once you are behind the Imam. Nothing, keep quiet. That's what the Hadith says. This other group, they say they focus on this, on while the Imam is reciting. This other group here, they say whilst the Imam is reciting is when this Hadith applies. But when one looks at it without any other evidence, this singular Hadith, it says, Man kana lahu imam, whoever has an imam, fa qira'atul imam lahu qira'ah. The qira'ah of the imam is his own qira'ah. So it's all encompassing for once you have an imam. Once you have an imam, it covers you, whether he's reciting aloud or not aloud. But again, as we said several times, we don't take one hadith in isolation. So we bring the other hadith that says, وَإِذَا قَرَأَ, and if he recites, فَأَنْسِتُ, then keep quiet. And we join both of them together, and this gives weight to this middle course over here. Gives weight to this middle course over here. So this hadith, we talked about it. This first group responds. They say that it is da'if. Each hadith is da'if. The second and the third group also, some of them say that it is da'if. Yes, we agree it is da'if. So we won't use it. Some say that it is da'if individually. However, when we bring them together, they strengthen themselves. So this is what we are talking about. It becomes Hasan, otherwise known as Sahih li ghayrihi. Some say there's nothing, so there's Sahih li ghayrihi. Now, and that is the more prudent way to go. And that is why it is a position of the majority of the scholars. Now, so that is on this. So when we look at this, what appears most correct is this position here. It is not too much to the left that says that it's da'if without looking at the evidences buttressing themselves. And it does not go too much to this side also by not looking at other ahadith that talk about whilst the imam is reciting. Whilst the imam is reciting. This one, this position in the middle, looks at all those. Let's look at the next thing. The next evidence is the addition to the hadith of Mubad ibn Samit, where it says, Illa bi al-Quran, that do not recite. The Prophet ﷺ was said to have said that do not recite. Then there is addition, that except al-Quran, except the Surah Al-Fatiha. لأنه فإنه لا صلاة لمن لم يقرأ بفاتحة الكتاب, because there is no salah for the one who does not recite the opening of the book. So this is the hadith. We talked about it, that this addition is weak. It has many weaknesses, and we took a few of the weaknesses. One, there was something that we left out. Imam al-Albani, he said that let us even look. Let us, apart from he said the hadith is inauthentic, but he said that let us assume that the hadith is authentic, that this addition over here is authentic. That it doesn't still mean, and please let's pay attention here, that it doesn't still mean that it is compulsory. That what it will still mean is the position of this second group, that it is mustahab. How can that be? Let us ask ourselves, let us answer to ourselves, what is the position of visiting the grave in Islam, in the Sharia? Is it compulsory? Is it mustahab? Oh no, let's even answer. Let's give a response. Let's send a chat. What is the position of visiting the grave? Is it compulsory, such that if you do it, you get rewarded? If you don't, you get punished? Or it is mustahab, meaning if you do it, you get rewarded. If you don't do it, you will not be punished. Malam Mujib says it is mustahab. Okay? Or is it mubah? Or is it makruh? Or is it haram? So I don't no other entry comes, that it isn't mustahab. The correct position is that it is mustahab. Why? It is that initially it was actually haram. The Prophet ﷺ prohibited from the people from going to the grave. Aisha radiallahu anha, our mother, he said, because the people were hadithul ahd, al-kufr, that the people were just new from kufr. They just got liberated from kufr. And worshipping the grave and things like that was still with them. So the Prophet ﷺ prohibited them. Then he now said that I had previously, in the hadith, I had previously prohibited you from visiting the grave. Now, fazuruha, visit them. So this is what Sheikh Al-Albani is saying. He said there was a prohibition that preceded prohibition, and thereafter it was followed by a permission. So he said the principles of usul al-fiqh is what made us arrive at it being mustahab. Mustahab. Why? It says that the principle of fiqh says that when there is a prohibition, and that prohibition is followed by a permission or an exemption, that permission or an exemption is by default not treated as compulsory. It is treated as, if you like, mustahab. If you do it, you get rewarded. If you don't do it, you don't get punished. That is why we arrived at visiting the grave being mustahab. And this is a fundamental principle of fiqh. So the Sheikh rahimahullah says that when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said over here, that's where, let me clear the board. When the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said over here, said, "Fala taf'alu," do not. This is a prohibition. Now followed by illa, an exemption, bi Quran, except Surah Al-Fatiha. That this exemption is mustahab, not compulsory. That if we close our eyes to the hadith being da'if, and we can't, but just for the sake of argument, if we assume that it is authentic, it does not tell us that it is compulsory to recite Surah Al-Fatiha. Then we looked at makhul, not mahkul, makhul, the mudallis, who uses an ana, and all the transmission of this hadith comes with an ana. As a mudallis used an ana, and also the errors. Sometimes he, narrated from this person, sometimes narrated from another person, the same, thing. So then another point here is that Imam al-Bukhari, even though he is of the opinion that this hadith is authentic, did not include it in a Sahih. He didn't include it in a Sahih. And when Imam Muslim was asked, he said on his own about another hadith of his own, why he didn't include it in his book. He said because he only puts in his book, Sahih Muslim, not only hadith that are authentic, but hadith that are authentic and not disputed. Whereas Imam al-Bukhari didn't put this condition with respect to his own, with respect to his own hadith. He has other books of hadith, like Adab al-Mufrad, but he didn't put this in his Sahih only hadith. Number 4 is that the companions, what the companions did as reported, either we say that it is the statement of Abu Huraira or Imam al-Zuhri, when the Prophet ﷺ said, why is it that the Quran is being contested from me, dragged with me? Where it now said the people stopped. فَانْتَهَا النَّاسِ عَنِ الْقِرَاءَةِ, and the people stopped reciting when the Prophet ﷺ was reciting aloud. So when we look at this second part, we are given over here this one to this one, to this group. When we look over here, this is a weakness that cannot be overlooked. And then with these explanations, when we look at the explanations in addition, we find that this also carries weight. This group is still not, this group looks at this evidence, this weakness as, it is daif. So it's not worth commenting on. It can be used as evidence. Khalas. But this third group even looks, okay, let us say it is authentic. Let us turn a blind eye for a second to its weakness. If it was authentic, will it still pass the test? No. The second slide. We looked at the 3 groups. Those that say you must recite, they bring the hadith, La salata liman lam yaqra bi fatihatil kitab. And they say it is authentic. Everybody agrees that it's authentic. It's in Bukhari and Muslim. The others agree with them on this point, that it is authentic. Everybody. However, this is general. This is specific. This group says that the Surah Al-A'raf, verse 204, وَإِذَا قُرِئَ الْقُرْآنُ, when the Quran is being recited, They say that it abrogates this hadith. And told ourselves that is too far, because we can still marry them. Abrogation is the last resort. And this hadith can be put together, as this middle group did, without abrogating one or the other. And one of the problems with abrogation is that you need to know the chronological, sequence of the hadith to know which one abrogates the other. So this is a middle course that it specifies it. It doesn't abrogate it. The Quran and other hadith that we talked about, like when the Imam is reciting, be quiet, they specify La salata liman lam yaqra bi fatihatil kitab. And we also said that even the proponents of La salata liman lam yaqra bi fatihatil kitab, there's no salah for the one who does not recite Surah Al-Fatiha. They say that there are exemptions to it. So this group say, hey, this one too is an exemption to it. So another weight for this group. The next one. من صلى صلاة لم يقرأ فيها بأم القرآن فهي خداج غير تام. Whoever performs salah, any salah, and does not recite Surah Al-Fatiha in it, then the salah is aborted. The salah is aborted, imperfect. And it was said to Abu Hurairah, فَقِيلَ لِي Abu Hurairah, إِنَّا نَكُونْ وَرَاءَ إِمَامٍ. The Tabi'in said to him, look, we are praying behind the Imam. How can we get this thing done then? We are not to recite while we can hear him recite. How then do we do it? He said, Iqra biha fi nafsik. Recite it silently to yourself. This is the fatwa of Abu Hurairah, who told us other positions like this. You have Jabir ibn Abdullah. Over here you have Ali ibn Abi Talib, and other companions hold different fatwas on it. So there's no ijma among the scholars with regards to this. So based on that, you have a fatwa here from the companions. You have a fatwa here from the companions, fatwa here from the companions, fatwa here from the companions. So based on fatwa of companions, they are on the same level. No one has weight over the other. They are all equal. We'll go to the third slide. Just 2 more slides after that. The next evidence, it says, An Zayd ibn Shuraim. This is the fatwa of, this is like the second one. This is a fatwa of Abu Hurairah. This is a fatwa of Abu Hurairah. And this one over here is the fatwa of Umar bin al-Khattab. So again, it's the what do you call it? It's the you have fatwa from other companions, so they are on the same level. They are on the same level. No fatwa of one companion has precedence over the fatwa of another companion. So next slide, second to last slide. Something now. So we've looked at evidences brought by this group and also by this group. So now let's look at evidences brought by those who say you must not recite. We looked at some of the evidences implicitly as we were going on, and so we now look at it and rebuttals that are given. So they say from Anil Hassan, An Abi Bakr. Now, the hadith of Abu Bakr, they say that because the Prophet ﷺ didn't ask Abu Bakr to repeat his salah, they say that that is evidence that even this Fatiha that we're talking about, recite it or don't recite it, it's not even a ruknu in salah. It's not even a ruknu in salah. That is their position. The others say something can be a rukn in salah, and one will be exempted from performing it if he meets certain criteria. And that is what happened in the case of Abu Bakr. So again, rather than canceling something out, if we can marry it out, marry them together, like those who say you must recite and those who hold this other position have done, then that is what we should do. So they come with they say another evidence. So over here, these two groups carry weight over this group. So then they bring another hadith. And all of them, despite these two groups having weight over this, they all accept this hadith as authentic. The next one says, إنما جعل الإمام ليؤتم به فإذا كبر فكبروا وإذا قرأ فأنصتوا. The Imam has only been appointed to be followed. If he recites, if he says takbir, say takbir. If he recites, keep quiet. In Sahih Muslim. So not only this group bring that, this second group agrees with them. That is authentic. Where they differ is the implication of the hadith. This one say this is implication that one is to keep quiet at all times during the position of recitation. This one say it is that it gives an opportunity to recite when the imam is silent, because it says وَإِذَا قَرَأَ, when he is reciting, فَأَنْصِتُوا, keep quiet. What of when he's not reciting? So it is mustahab to do so, to recite. This group says the hadith is da'if. It's in Abu Dawud is da'if, and Nasai is da'if, Ibn Majah is da'if, even in Muslim it is da'if. It can't be correct. Not that they brought any. Now, for the ones in Abu Dawud, Nasai, and Ibn Majah, no, there are some of the chains that have weaknesses, but the one in Muslim, it is actually their position that they use as weight against the hadith, that because of our position, this can't be correct. So this is a weak stand on that. If there had been specific, mentions of the weakness in the hadith of Imam Muslim, then it will have been, it will have brought weight to their position that, oh, this person that was said in the hadith of Imam Muslim was a liar or something, like that, or he was alone in transmitting and is a weak narrator or something like that. Then it will give weight to it. The last slide. And Abu Huraira, they brought from Abu Huraira, where he says, now, so the hadith of Abu Huraira, where the Prophet ﷺ was reciting, and he asked the people if somebody had recited with him, and they said yes, and he said, yeah, I knew that. I was saying to myself, why is it that the Quran was being contested with me? I said, this addition, فَانْتَهَا النَّاسِ عَنِ الْقِرَاءَةِ, that the people stop reciting. People stop reciting. So they say the implication of this hadith, those I say you must not recite anything, either you must keep quiet at all times. This second group says it is, the implication is that when the imam is silent, it gives you the opportunity to recite it. There's no prohibition during that time. And anyway we caught it, whether it's a statement of Imam al-Zuhri or Imam or Abu Huraira, it was talking about what the companions did, irrespective of the fatwa of individual companions. And we see that there are companions holding each of the positions. So based on this again, this this position carries full marks. This one in this case half mark, and this one not even half mark, because their position here, this shouldn't was from the last slide, forgot to clean it out. They say that is da'if, or the words of Abu Huraira or Zuhri. If it's the word of Abu Huraira or Zuhri, we've talked about that here. And so that is it. So when we look at all the slides together in this manner, we'll see that the one that carries the most weight is the position in the middle, which is you try to recite when the Imam is silent, before he starts his Surah Al-Fatiha. If he stops between Fatiha and the next Surah, before he goes for Ruku' after the second, after the Surah, after Surah Al-Fatiha, and the process when he's saying Allahu Akbar, going for Ruku' before he settles in Ruku'. You are not to move before he has settled in his Ruku' anyway. So you use that, all these pauses for reciting. It is Mustahab, not compulsory, because of the hadith that says that فَانْتَهَنَّاسِ عَنِ الْقِرَاءَةِ, and where the Prophet asked them not to recite behind it. So that removes the compulsion. But the reason behind the law was that people were contesting with the Prophet with a recitation, and that confused the recitation of the Prophet. So if we can recite without having that done during the pauses, then that is what you should do, without interfering with the Imam. During the pauses, there's nothing, no text that says during the pauses don't recite. It's prohibited, that says it's prohibited to recite during the pauses. There's no text that says that. It's an understanding of the text by this third group that says that instead. So this is why we based on what I see, and the position of the majority of the scholars is the position here that seems most correct. However, as we've said several times in this class, we've just done the explanation. Everyone poses a duty to himself to look at the evidences and choose the position that is most convincing to him. Now, barakallahu fikum. So I'll open the house now for comments that we may have. Barakallahu fikum. Now. So do we have any questions?
I don't have a question. Just to say,
Jazakumullah khairan for the explicit explanation. And this is what I requested for last week about the that you mentioned to us the basis of the why there are differences of opinions among the scholars. I mean, and I think you've done it in a way. And this is why we learned, like you have explained to us before, the basis of fiqh that we have treated many times in the past. And I think this is a clear application of the class of the fiqh, why there are differences of opinion, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you for your efforts. Jazakumullah khair.
Barakallahu fikum for for the comments, for listening, and the time and all that. Barakallahu fikum. Barakallahu fikum. So, inshallah, if we don't have many further questions, we'll end the class. Subhanakallah wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I would just like to echo the comment by Brother Tawfiq, to say that Jazakumullah Khairan for taking the effort to actually research this in a lot of depth and for finding the time to present it in a very concise way. May Allah reward you and may Allah accept it from us.
Amen.
As well as act of ibadah. Jazakumullah khairan.
Ayakum. Barakallahu fikum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Till next week.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.